Is House of the Dragon a woke show? Woke is a term that's used to refer to a situation in which someone might be trying to enlighten a person by bringing attention to a social or political issue. Though these issues can technically be about anything, nowadays the term is mostly used to refer to issues concerning racial discrimination and gender inequality. It is a term that was initially meant to be positive, but today there are a lot of negative connotations associated with it. Particularly within the realm of film and media, the term woke is often used to scrutinize movies and shows that feel as though they are trying to force political or social narratives, especially if doing so feels unjustified or unnecessary.
So who are you, Maeve?
I'm gay.
And this is what the fans of House of the Dragon accuse the show's producers of doing in adapting the source material of Fire and Blood to the screen. Many fans accuse the showrunners of House of the Dragon of making unnecessary and unjustified changes to the story of the Dance of the Dragons for the sake of pushing certain political or social agendas. They think that these changes were unneeded, and that in fact, they create inconsistencies and biases within the story that result in the narrative feeling like, rather than being compellingly good, that it has a woke agenda. There are actually two issues that are raised in support of this argument. One, the issue of race-swapping Corlys Velaryon and the rest of the Velaryon house, and two, the positive portrayal of female characters in comparison to the male characters.
I would just want people to stop looking at this like, hey, everyone who's mad about this is inherently racist, because it's not the reality.
Not necessarily.
Some of us just love the originals and we want to see it done as close to the originals as possible. Stop blackwashing these characters. Stop fucking politically correcting washing these characters.
Batman
just make good shit, nigga.
In the A Song of Ice and Fire books, the Velaryons are said to be of Valyrian descent and to possess the typical features of the Valyrian people. One of the characteristics that are important in that list of features is the fact that the Valyrians had pale white skin, and the importance of these features is stressed out by the author throughout the book series. The fact that people of Valyrian descent look so different from the typical Westerosi is part of why so many people believe that they are closer to gods than they are to men. It's why people believe that they have the magical gift to control dragons, and it's the only reason why the Targaryens were so adamant in betrothing themselves to the Velaryons. Therefore, the Valyrian features are an important aspect of the story, and that's why so many fans are passionate about them being depicted correctly. George R. R. Martin's writing style is very meticulous and purposeful. It's why so many critics have praised his books for having immersive world building and realistic characters, because he writes as though every word is meaningful and important. Fans of this series spend hours, sometimes days and weeks, reading his books, so they cannot be blamed for being so invested in the characters and the world. They love these books, and in their experience, when the books are being adapted accurately, it's the only time that the TV shows adapting them tend to do very well. This can be seen with the first 4 seasons of Game of Thrones, when the show was being adapted directly from the narratives in the first 3 books. The show was extremely popular and highly praised, with many critics speaking highly of the quality of the writing as well as the well-realized characters. However, in the last 4 seasons, when the showrunners began to deviate from the source material, that is when the show began to suffer, and when the critics' perceptions of it began to slowly change. The show gradually became worse until the final season, and the terrible quality of that season basically destroyed the legacy of the entire show. So you can understand why fans become so nervous when the showrunners of House of the Dragon start changing important aspects of the Dance of the Dragons, including the race swapping of Corlys Velaryon. The main problem that fans have with this change is that though it may seem like a minor one, it actually creates ripple effects that create problems for the rest of the narrative. For example, it takes away the mystery of Rhaenyra's children actually being Laenor's, and it does create inconsistencies for the rest of the story. Though these inconsistencies might not matter too much now, they will matter in the future and the impact of it will become more significant as the narrative continues.
There's another real problem. This is a prequel to Game of Thrones. There's black people in the prequel.
They're all gone later.
They're all gone later.
Yeah.
So what happened?
Yeah.
There's 0 black people in Game of Thrones?
The show hasn't given a good reason for why the Velaryons needed to be race swapped, so people view this change as being unnecessary and unjustified. It makes it seem as though the showrunners prioritize the semblance of diversity and inclusion at the sacrifice of good and coherent storytelling. This is why fans believe that House of the Dragon is woke, and the showrunners are more concerned with pushing certain political and social agendas. But this is not the only reason why they believe this. There's another change to the source material that makes fans believe that the show is being influenced by modern political agendas, and is therefore a woke narrative.
Here is the hard truth, which no one else has the heart to tell you. Men would sooner put the realm to the torch than see a woman ascend the Iron Throne.
One thing that many fans have pointed out about House of the Dragon's characters is how different the female ones are portrayed in comparison to the male ones. It seems as though the female characters are presented a lot more positively on the show than they were described in the book, and in many instances their negative characteristics are shifted onto the male characters associated with them. A good example of this is with Rhaenyra's character. In the book, Rhaenyra is a lot more ruthless and ambitious than she is on the show. For example, when Vaemond Velaryon becomes a threat to her son's path to power, Rhaenyra has him seized and executed before he can make his petitions at King's Landing. Sources also claim that Rhaenyra fed Vaemond's corpse to a dragon, Syrax, and that her actions were as a result of the intention to secure her power in the Blackwater. So, in the books, Rhaenyra is also ambitious for power. When the envoys from King's Landing come to negotiate peace terms with her, she casts them away and she makes threats towards her half-brother, Aegon. She says, "Tell my half-brother that I will have my throne or I will have his head." However, on the show, Rhaenyra's character is very different. In House of the Dragon, Rhaenyra is peaceful towards the Green's envoys, and she lacks the ambition of her book counterpart. These traits are removed from her character in order to present her more positively, and are rather shifted onto Daemon's character so that he seems more villainous. On the show, it is Daemon who kills Vaemond Velaryon, and it is Daemon who threatens the envoys from King's Landing.
She can have her answer now, stuffed in her father's mouth along with his withered cock. Let's end this mummer's farce. Sir Eric, bring me Lord Hightower so I may take the pleasure myself.
In the book, Rhaenyra is upset that the Greens have usurped her throne, and she blames them for the death of her father and her stillborn daughter. She doesn't want to sue for peace. Rather, she wants to declare war on the Green faction. However, on the show, Rhaenyra quickly seems to forgive the Greens for their acts of treason, and it is rather Daemon who seems angry enough to urge for war. The show shifts Rhaenyra's ruthless and ambitious nature to Daemon in order to keep Rhaenyra as the likable protagonist, while Daemon is presented more negatively as a power-hungry and violent character. And the show doesn't only do this with Rhaenyra and Daemon. Again, in the book, Alicent's character is a lot more ambitious and ruthless than she's portrayed on the show. She certainly commits acts that make it clear how villainous she can be. For example, in the book, Alicent truly wants Aegon to be the king of the Seven Kingdoms, because she recognizes how young and tractable he would be as a ruler. She understands that Aegon wouldn't be a headstrong sovereign, so she sees an opportunity to be able to rule through her son's claim and as his regent. Therefore, Alicent takes ruthless actions to ensure that Aegon is placed on the Iron Throne. She's the one who spearheads the Green Council and rallies supporters for his cause, and she's even rumored to have poisoned Viserys in order to make way for Aegon's ascension. At an earlier point, she even suggests that Aegon and Rhaenyra be betrothed to one another in order to bind them in marriage and ensure that Aegon becomes king. Her ambitions are so clear that even Viserys himself recognizes them. The boy is Alicent's own blood, he told Lord Strong. She wants him on the throne. However, on the show, Alicent's character is very different. In House of the Dragon, Alicent seems less interested in placing Aegon on the throne and more interested in championing Rhaenyra's cause. There are several times throughout the show where she openly supports Rhaenyra's ascension.
Rhaenyra will be a good queen.
If you had not been so relentless in advancing Aegon as heir!
You will make a fine queen.
Alicent has no political ambitions and is portrayed as being peaceful and a victim of her father's schemes. Instead, it is Otto who wants Aegon to be the king of the Seven Kingdoms, and it is Otto who rallies support for Aegon's cause. He spearheads the Green Council and crowns Aegon, and it is even subtly insinuated that he might have poisoned Viserys. All of the negative character traits that were associated with Alicent are now shifted onto Otto's character on House of the Dragon. It is now Otto who is depicted as being ruthlessly ambitious. On the show, it's even Otto who suggests that Aegon and Rhaenyra be betrothed to one another in order to bind them in marriage and ensure that Aegon becomes king.
Who do you have in mind?
Prince Aegon.
Alicent's negative characteristics are shifted onto Otto in order to make Alicent a lot more sympathetic than she was in the book. This actually happens with most of the male and female characters on the show. The female characters are a lot more sympathetic, peaceful, and wise, while the male characters are more ruthless, power-hungry, and even incompetent. While Rhaenyra, for example, is made to seem like a good and capable ruler, Aegon is made to be an awful person so as to seem as though he'd be a far more terrible ruler in comparison. And the show does this deliberately. In the book, there are passages in which Aegon is presented in a more sympathetic light, lines in the story that show that he could be a genuinely good person, capable of love and compassion, even though he was no doubt a flawed young man. There's a passage, for example, that describes Aegon's affair with a merchant's daughter in King's Landing. Aegon is described to have been in love with this girl and to have taken good care of her, probably by showering her with gifts and granting her certain privileges. He is still a flawed character who evidently cheats on his wife, but he also seems more sympathetic as though he yearns for genuine love. In the book, he even cares about his siblings, erecting statues of them as a way to remember them after they die. He even has a slight sense of honor as well, because when Sir Criston Cole tells him about the plan to crown him as king instead of Rhaenyra, Aegon is reluctant to be a part of the conspiracy. He is alleged to have said, "What sort of brother steals his sister's birthright?" However, on the show, Aegon doesn't do any of these things. In fact, he bullies his siblings, calling Helaena names and tormenting his little brother Aemond because he doesn't have a dragon. On the show, Aegon is sadistic, foolish, a drunkard, and he even essays his female servants. The showrunners deliberately try to villainize his character and portray him as worse than Rhaenyra. In the book, there are actually two sources that describe Aegon's character: Septon Eustace's and mushrooms. The showrunners in this instance use mushrooms accounts when they adapt Aegon's character for the screen. And this is very interesting because mushrooms accounts are the most salacious version between the two. Mushroom was Rhaenyra's fool, which means that it is more likely that his accounts of Aegon were biased and untrue, especially because Mushroom wasn't even in King's Landing to be a witness to Aegon's behaviors. A lot of the allegations that Mushroom makes about Aegon's character are done while he is in Dragonstone, far away from Aegon, who is in King's Landing. It is therefore not implausible to think that Mushroom could have just been spreading rumors about Aegon's character, but the show doesn't consider that when it adapts him for the screen. As far as the showrunners seem to be concerned, when Mushroom says negative things about Aegon, then the sources are considered to be accurate and true. But if Mushroom says something negative about Rhaenyra, then his accounts are misogynistic and absolutely false. For example, when Mushroom says that Aegon watched children fight in pits, then that is considered to be gospel. But if Mushroom says that Rhaenyra was a fat and jealous woman, then it is as a result of a conspiracy by the patriarchy to besmirch Rhaenyra's good name. However, book fans disagree with this perspective, and they feel as though these depictions are as a result of a feminist agenda that's being pushed by the showrunners themselves. Miguel Sapochnik himself even admits this in an interview. When he was asked about how they approached the adaptation of the source material, Sapochnik said that all they wanted to do was focus the narrative more on the female perspective and less on the male one. He then goes on to describe how they did this, but his statement makes it clear that the writers and producers of the show were being influenced by modern political agendas when they were adapting the story. He says that they adapted Rhaenyra to be a punk rock kind of character, while Alicent was adapted to be a woman for Trump kind of character. While Rhaenyra would be fighting to topple the patriarchy within Westerosi society, Alicent would be fighting to maintain it, like women who support Donald Trump over female politicians like Hillary Clinton, for example. However, if Alicent is woman for Trump, then that insinuates that Aegon is Donald Trump himself. And this makes sense when you start analyzing Aegon's character on the show in comparison to Donald Trump in real life. Trump is no stranger to controversies and scandals in real life, so the writers consider that in their adaptation of Aegon's character on the show. For example, Trump has often been accused of saying bad, misogynistic things about women.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals.
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
She's basically a disaster. If I were running The View, I'd fire Rosie. I mean, I'd look her right in that fat, ugly face of hers. I'd say, Rosie, you're fired.
And so the writers adapt Aegon's character to be the same way, calling women names and treating them with contempt.
She's an idiot.
When?
If you ever wish to know what it is to be well satisfied, all you have to do is ask.
Trump has also been accused of essaying women and touching them in inappropriate ways. So obviously, as Aegon is being adapted for the screen, rumors about him being an essayist are going to be taken literally.
I asked him to stop, Your Grace. He did. Truly. You must believe me.
Therefore, Aegon is clearly meant to be a caricature of Trump, which is why Sapochnik insinuates this when he refers to Alicent as a woman for Trump. In the end, he might be considered to have been a worse ruler than Rhaenyra was, even though that wasn't entirely the case in the book. Many fans believe that this is as a result of a woke feminist agenda, and that Aegon is being negatively portrayed in order to make Rhaenyra look like the hero. While his deeds are villainized and portrayed negatively on the show, Rhaenyra's are whitewashed and portrayed a lot more positively. And this is apparently the case with most males and females on the show. The males are portrayed as power-hungry, sadistic, and ruthless characters, while the females are presented as peaceful, wise, and often heroic characters. Even Mysaria, a minor character in the story, is presented positively as a character who tries to end the sadistic act of watching children fight in pits. Meanwhile, Larys, another minor character, is a kinslayer, and Jason Lannister is a misogynist. It's quite difficult to find a male character on the show that's presented positively, and it might be as a result of the woke feminist agenda that the show is trying to push. Now, House of the Dragon is not a terrible show by any means, but it is clear that it is very different from the source material that it is trying to adapt. It has certainly made a lot of significant changes to some of its most important characters, and some fans believe that these changes are motivated by certain political agendas. They believe that House of the Dragon is a woke show as a result. But what do you think? Let me know how you feel about these opinions down below in the comments section. And if you like this video, click the thumbs up and subscribe for future content. Thank you for watching. Peace.